Hey, you got the new link I just sent? That you just got 616 or whatever. Not the first one. What are you logging on from? I mean, you're on a computer? Yeah. All right. Bye. Let's see. Can everybody hear me? Yep. I haven't loaded you in yet. Sluggish. Yeah. Can you hear me? Wait a minute. Did we? Oh. Come on. All right. Bye. Can everybody hear me?
Can everybody hear?
I can.
I'm good.
Oh, there it is. Anthony, you
Hey,
there?
Yes, sir.
Anthony, I was about to go take my jacket off, and you put
Hey,
yours on.
man, let's go. Let's go. I was seeing you brothers all buttoned up. I had some jeans on and a jacket.
If I wasn't
Let's
coming
go.
from a meeting, I was trying to close a deal.
So we are waiting on JR.
Carlos, how you doing?
I'm good, brother. You?
I'm doing great. Akil, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing wonderful, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to virtually meet you.
Absolutely. Same here.
Hey, pleasure meeting you, gentlemen. Terry, man, it's my name.
Terry, good to see you, man.
Good being seen.
Hey, I know I sent out a link or an email to you all. Do y'all brothers have any questions or topics you want me to put before you tonight that you're passionate about? You want to make sure we cover tonight?
And we
Um,
are we're live at this point, so we're gonna get into it. So
Cool.
feel free to
Ready to roll.
ready to roll.
You ready to roll, Ken? You gonna do an intro? Or you want me to go in?
You can go ahead and go in. I'll come in behind you.
Perfect. Thanks for everybody for joining us tonight for this roundtable discussion entitled "I Will Vote: Cutting Through the Lies, Delivering Facts, and Inspiring People to Vote." The purpose tonight, we've got a great cast of activists, businessmen, and also community leaders that I'm excited to actually have an insightful conversation with to cover a wide range of topics, not just about getting out to vote, but also talking about why you should vote at the top of the ballot, but also down the ballot and here locally, and just inspiring us to get out and do what we do best is show why we are important as a community and why our vote is very important in this time as we go into a new decade and how we want to look further, not just because of this generation, but future generations to come. We've got Ken Lumpkin that is leading this thing off and put it together with 12KC. We've got Akil Hutchins with Vote KC, and we've got a good brother of mine, Carlos Estes, from the 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. And as you all may know and be aware of, we have Terry Riley, former councilman and state representative, as well as a local community top company, health executive, one of our top companies. So, Ken, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can get into the discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So we are here to deliver information for the community. So we are officially 2 weeks out from the election, one of the biggest elections of our lifetime, and that's no exaggeration. And so we want to make sure that we deliver information for the community, make sure that we cut through, a lot of the information that's out there that's passed on just through memes and headlines, but what are the real facts? And so that's really what we are getting into today.
Perfect. With that being said, I'd like to put out the first question to the brothers that are on here is, we know that we've had some challenges with Trump, but a lot of people are talking about how bad Trump is. Why is Biden better? Are there other options that we should be thinking about 2 weeks out from the election?
Well, Carlos, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Anthony, I don't know if the choice is Trump better or is Biden better. I think for me, the true answer to the question is what's better for you as an individual voter. When you sit back and look at what's going on in our community right now, the worst thing that we can do is sit on the sidelines. Right? Us being a part of the process, being engaged, being informed, educated, helps us move forward. And I think that's probably the focal point for me is which candidate helps our community the most. And I know we got pros and cons for both, but are you informed as a voter, period, is my question.
Perfect. Being an informed voter. Terry, do you want to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think Carlos is on point. Being an informed voter, and in I was just on a call on Friday. The African American community and the Latino community will be inundated with baseless information via the internet. So on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, you will be getting unfactual things. And so you always need to go back to the source of the information. And so it's important to look at the source before you repost something, because you might just be posting something from a Russian bot. And so don't make yourself a bot by posting something that's not factual.
Terry, that's a great point. We're inundated with a lot of information. And whether it's on social media, whether it's on the news media, whether it's on print, what have you, what are some of the credible sources that you all believe that we should be looking at, and how do we even engage in the process of fact checking?
Well, there is some information. It's called factchecker.com. Yeah, factchecker.com, and it's pretty accurate. And so therefore you can go there and check the information out before you vote. And
Okay.
so I'm sorry, it sounds a little garbled there, but please don't just look at some crazy website and get misinformation, because it's happening a lot right now.
Okay. Akil, do you have something to add? Carlos talked about coming in from the sidelines to be participating as
You're
an
on mute, Akil.
informed voter, but also not being an informed voter. But why is it important? And what are some of the sources that you've utilized to make sure that you're making informed decisions, not just at the top of the ballot? We all hear a lot of information about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but what about the top to bottom? So what are some of the sources and some of your thoughts on that?
Initially, I mean, even just getting started, I mean, I started with vote.org. Then I got linked with Vote KC. So votekc.com also has info. But trying to find, nonpartisan, true information is difficult, to be honest. And it takes digging into research. And I mean, going and looking for something, I've used Google and just trying to fact check sources. I mean, that's the best way I can tell you. Both also, looking at news on both sides, looking at Fox, looking at CNN, trying to get both perspectives to help you kind of mold your own initial opinion. So, and then also just asking and talking to people that might be, experts or experienced in certain fields, whether it's an elected official or, someone that's been in the politics game, or, people that push agendas through Washington, D.C. So,
So, and one of the things is, I know we're up against a 2-week deadline, but get registered to vote. So if you can't participate in this election, we have elections that go on every 2 years. Just getting involved and participating and getting registered to vote. That's the important step that I would like to add to that. What are some of the challenges that you see with both candidates? I want this discussion to be insightful, but also want it to be, let's have a real conversation. What are some of the challenges that you see with Trump? What are some of the challenges you see with Biden? And then we've got some independent candidates, libertarian candidates, and we got Kanye's on the ballot. So talk about what your thoughts are, or the candidates that we have to choose from as a president of the United States perspective.
to be honest, I mean, I think we should be really looking past this election. Just to be quite honest, and mold together a movement to help propel our community. Because I don't think either candidate right now is going to be able to address systemic oppression the way that we deal with. So in a real way. So I'm not saying skip or hold your vote hostage or anything like that. But what I am saying is understanding that this is not the end all be all, that we really need to be looking at like a 2022 kind of coup, as I like to think of it in my mind. So it's it's very important. Trump and Biden, we need to get Trump out. And I'm supposed to be nonpartisan, but at the end of the day, we really need to move
No
forward.
nonpartisan on this call. It's all in.
Yeah.
Full gas.
If I may add, this is one of the most important elections of our lifetime, not with the president, the two guys that are running, but the ability to appoint federal judges, because these federal judges will dictate in all types of areas across this country what is passed through that actually end up subsequently going to the Supreme Court. And people say, what did Obama really do for America? Let me get the record straight. Obama appointed 62 African American to lifetime appointments in the federal court. And then some of those were district courts in which it never happened before. During Obama's administration, he appointed 20% of his judges were African American. I think 16% under Clinton and 7% under Bush. Under this guy now, Trump, he's appointed one African American judge out of 200. It is dangerous what's happening, because 2 generations from now, 30 years from now, our kids' kids will be dealing with this. That's why I feel this election is very important. And let me go back to the brother's comment earlier. These other elections, the congressional members in the U.S. Senate, just like you said, is very important because in the U.S. Congress right now, the Civil Rights Voting Act is sitting there, $15 an hour is sitting there, minimum wage. There is a number of equal pay is sitting there. All these things are sitting there because it can't push through the U.S. Senate, and so you're important. I think you're right on point. In the local elections are the most important elections you can be engaged in.
Carlos, do you have anything you want to add? I know Ken wants to jump in because Ken and I've
Yeah.
had a couple conversations. But Carlos, do you have
Right.
something you want to add? Because I think what Terry and both Akil bring to the forefront is, hey, we got to start looking and voting and succession, years of succession, not just right now, but 2 years from now, 4 years from now. And I know from your perspective, looking at it from a financial point of view, you're always looking the next generation out. So how does that translate into what we're talking about today?
So before you even get to the financial aspect, Anthony, I want to key in on what I think is extremely important also is the infrastructure on why the local vote matters. And I'll use an example, right? We keep looking at politicians and their platform and their agenda, but we also got to look at it from our community, what's going to build our infrastructure. Let's utilize laptops in schools right now. People get laptops in schools to compete, become more competitive, learn a different way. But how do we make sure when that kid leaves school, they got internet at the home? So I got a tool now that I can use to learn. I go home and that tool is useless because I don't have the internet. How do we look at our infrastructure and say, how do we give our kids these tools, move them forward, and that whatever the plan is, it can be used across all platforms, all times. Whereas the other kids go home, they have the internet, they have other services, they have other usage. So think about this. My laptop only works while I'm in school. I go home and can't use it. Whereas the other kids are using it 12 hours a day, 18 hours a day. And so to me, it's that kind of infrastructure when we look at our local vote that matters. How do we get people in office that are going to support us and our platform beyond today, tomorrow, for the next 10 years?
Akil mentioned the word coup or the term coup. I totally agree with that word coup because what you're talking about, Carlos, a coup to me is saying how do we get involved at the local level, at the Board of Education, at the city council level, at the state representative level? How do we get involved even at the federal level now? So when we start looking, we have to have an agenda. We have to have a purpose behind why we get candidates in the pipeline. And we should be stacking them, not just for 2020, 2022, 2024. And now we have our own agenda. So we're not knocking at the door of a president to say, hey, here's our agenda. Here's what we want to do. We should be holding people accountable locally to do those things. And then we have to think about the economic development component. But I'll be quiet because I'm excited to hear you brothers talking about those things and these topics, because I think it'll spark a movement that we look beyond just voting one time and only pushing an agenda because we want to get rid of a president. We got mayoral elections coming up. We got city council elections coming up. We got an attorney, lieutenant governor seat that's coming up with all people that we're familiar with. Ken, what did you want to jump in and share?
So all of this is connected in terms of the federal elections on down. One of the things in terms of discussions, we get caught up in a component of, does this matter or does this matter? What's the priority when we look at the elections? And if you look at the way Trump throws around, it affects everything down to a local level. We look at the homicides that are coming in Kansas City. Trump sent federal agents here to Kansas City. You look at things just like, Kanye West back in the day when he said, George Bush doesn't like black people. That was a local issue in terms of a Hurricane Katrina, that they're looking for federal support. So when we talk about the election coming up, everything is going to tie back there. Whether you're talking about your highways, you're talking about your judges, you're talking about your taxes, absolutely everything is going to circle back. The larger picture there is even beyond policy. It's just the general narrative that's shared in terms of what's the communication, what's the vision, and also watching, what's the virus. And when I say virus, I'm not talking about just COVID. I'm saying when you're when you have evil basically coming from the mouth of the president, when you have racism, when you have division, you're sowing those seeds. It's going to the masses. Trump isn't on Twitter because it reaches, his base or just one person. He's on there because it's reaching the masses. And so I'm going to stop there and come back with some additional points later.
Perfect. Akil, I'll put this question to you. As we look and prepare beyond 2020, what are some of the people that we should be looking at and preparing to build an agenda, but also a list of candidates here locally that we can expound upon? It also leads not just from Kansas City, but it leads to a pipeline to Jefferson City. And I'll even venture to say what we've seen through this year, we've seen the Kansas City, Missouri mayor have impact on Kansas City, Kansas, and some other counties around the surrounding areas. And so that's an important position that we're looking at because it has influence at least across the 4-county or regional county area.
It's amazing that you said that because, I mean, you see some of the changes like the incumbency in St. Louis being taken over by Cori Bush. So I think that off rip, you got to say her name because especially with us being in Missouri, even the lieutenant governor seat that's up for election this year. I mean, we got a black woman there, so it's a lot of different communities that I think are ready to engage, and I think that young people with all different backgrounds and I would dare to say blemishes, because I mean what they try to make it seem is people without flaws or mistakes are in politics, but I mean, people that are representative of the masses.
Right.
So, I just think that people of all distinction should look at politics and not be afraid to jump in there. So when you say specifically, I mean, really it could be anybody. I know a young brother, Sam Arnold, he's jumping into politics. And I love to see that because I think that when young people engage, they get other people that aren't even engaged in politics and understanding engaged in a political process where it's so cumbersome and bureaucratic that it's easy to understand. Well, I just like him; he's cool. I'm just gonna understand and see what he's doing. So that gets them engaged in a whole different aspect. So yeah.
Terry, you kind of grinned a little bit at Akil's comment when he was talking about politicians. We think they have to have a perfect record or a record without blemishes. I know I thought about, man, I wish I had like a Carfax report on some of our politicians that are in office today. We could go back and see the history to show us, because we do think we have to be perfect. We got to be pristine. As African Americans, we have to have this record of with no blemishes. They don't want to pull out the secrets or the skeletons out. But speak to that a little bit from your experience, Terry.
Man, let me tell you this, and Kenny knows this. When I ran for office, I barely got into the frat. Some brothers had to vouch for me. I said, man, that guy's from the hood. He's not going to. But it was a brother by the name of Derek Sims. He's passed since now. And a couple other brothers that just vouched for me and said, no, I see something in this man. And they pushed me forward. And so from that, been a school board, state rep, city councilman, national president of the Black Caucus, and going to and talking about being the national president. One of the things I did as president was I put a program together, and it's still going to this day. It is a elected officials leadership academy, and we pick 5 each year. And they go in and they're trained on how to be a productive elected official. I believe we need to do that here at the local level. Instead of leaving elected officials out there, we need to get them trained. So when you get there, you know what to do. And so, man, I think you're right on point. How can we engage? He talked about public infrastructure. Public infrastructure and the infrastructure of the internet. Right now, what's embodied in the bill that Pelosi's fighting for is to have internet access for inner city schools and rural communities rolled all into one. That is the game changer that we're looking for. And that's the type of thing we need to push our local elected officials about. And as far as the school district, my next initiative that I would love to work on with you guys is making entrepreneurship a graduation requirement in the school district so we can teach our kids how to work for themselves instead of getting a job when they get out of school.
Hey, and that works directly into the narrative of everybody's not meant for college, but I've known and certified minority businesses and majority owned businesses that are contractors, electricians, plumbers, painters that make six figures. But we have this image that I have to play a professional sport or I have to go to college in order to make six figures. While you go and look at other communities, man, they're building businesses off of entrepreneurship and hiring our people and people of color to make money, millions of dollars. So, Carlos, did you want to add something to the conversation as well, too? You're muted.
I think that's a very valid point. One of our keys to wealth is definitely entrepreneurship, right? And so it starts with ownership. There's an echo. Is that me?
Nah, keep rolling.
Okay. Yeah, so it starts with ownership. And I think getting engaged in programs and doing things that help us become better owners is critical to our success. We're always chosen for surveys, studies, and all kinds of things. But take that intellect, take that power, take that ambition, and put it to work for yourself. What better way to reach the American dream is at home, man. That's what it's all about. When you own a home and go to the bank, different kind of situation than when you're renting or leasing and asking for help. So ownership is critical.
What else is critical, Ken? I know you've been out in the community for years doing marketing and social media, social branding, working at the corporate level, working at the entrepreneurial level. What do you see as important if we want to build a grassroots effort that develops into civic development and then local and state levels? What do you see as important, Ken?
So definitely the wealth building. I mean, that's a critical component. But, when we look at our community as a whole, it takes that 360-degree view. And so meaning that, from a service perspective, we talk about, nonprofit organizations, how they can weigh in and how they can build. And we talk about reaching to kids and mentoring and development, things of that nature. That's all important. One of the things that I think that we all need to kind of take a step back and consider is just our moral footing as well. So we're looking at a president that's really morally bankrupt. And when I talk about development, and this is, you'll see this here. I saw a post today. Someone said, well, Trump is a narcissist, sexist, POS, but I like his values. Now you've just said everything that's wrong with him in terms of presenting to the public. He's an unintentional role model for the community, but you saying you like his values. And so that's where, we're at a crossroads in this country when we don't start in terms of, what's really dangerous in our community, where our moral footing is, and start there to say, there's some things that are definitely wrong and right and wrong. And so we have to develop a center there. We're going to have some opposing views on some things for sure. We're not going to have to agree on everything, but there has to be, agreement on things, murder, homicide, that's wrong, and so we've got a president, with 26 counts of sexual misconduct, and we'll go down the list.
Bill Cosby's in jail.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And it's like we keep giving people a pass, and not only do we give them a pass, we appoint them as leaders in our community. And again, we're responsible for our children and things of that nature, but we're not their only lens. We know about peer pressure and things of that nature. And it's like, we send our kids out, try to train them the best we can, And then at the end of the day, you hear someone saying that, I can stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody. And then you wonder why we have a violence in the community problem.
But is that a presidential problem? And let's separate some of this. Is it a presidential problem or is it a local or state problem? I say because they're blurring the lines and attaching a lot of things to the president. But I look at it and say some things that Donald Trump has done. Like he's a product of the system. He's a byproduct of a system that's in place that continues to allow him to be so. But they blur the line. So how do we separate that?
Well, I don't. Well, you've heard. Everyone's always heard. It starts at the top. You can't separate in terms of saying, in terms of presenting a business. You take a corporation, you take a government entity. Everyone's going to say it starts at the top with leadership. You take the corporations and let's take the NBA when the LA Clippers owner said something racist, told his girlfriend not to bring black people to the games. They started at the top. They killed that, made him sell his company, because you're not going to be at the top and start presenting proposals, visions to the rest of the community when we know that's tainted. And so that's the same lens that goes through our state, our local, but every entity is going to start at the top.
Hey, I look at that, Ken, as a great example, and I'll get to you, Akil, but he sold the Clippers organization for a high level of appreciation. So he didn't lose. He just lost. He's an owner. So Akil, I'll go to you because I look at it and say, how do we separate the rhetoric at the presidential level and have us put a plan of action at the state and local, because they're blending it. They take local candidates and sign it to Trump. They take local candidates and sign them to Biden. How do we separate it?
That's difficult because federally, because really what I wanted to say is when you're looking at our politics, talking with somebody, it made me realize that, American politics is really global politics. So how that we shape the world in the way that, we lead. So with a leader like Ken is talking about, what does that do for smaller countries, other countries outside of our community? You know what I mean? When we're talking about domestic problems on the state and local level, then that's grassroots. That's you, your homie, and your homie's girl getting together one night and saying, "Hey, what's going on in our neighborhood?" That's really where it starts at, and then it just builds from there. We've had this thing called social media, which is a phenomenon, and that's what's connected everything now. So, how it's always been is grassroots organizations always kind of lead the forefront of everything, but now they've been bolstered in a way. So to answer your question specifically, you can really just write it down and say, hey, these are the values that my congressman Ryan Dirk is telling me, and here's some issues that my congressman brother Emmanuel Cleaver is telling me. So you look at both sides and figure out who's right for you, and you vote in your self-interest.
That's important.
Exactly.
Because they've tricked us. In my opinion, they've tricked us to vote a color or along party lines. And so right. several years ago, I looked and said, man, well, this political party is red. This political party is blue. Man, if you grew up in a certain neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri, red and blue was gang colors. And so I'm like, man, they're doing the same level thing at the top as we're doing at the bottom, and they're forcing us to choose when we have no other option. So what I'm looking and saying that is politics that are connected to grassroots efforts, and they blend it, and we don't even recognize what they're doing. And so we're still picking a color the same way that they're doing with the mask right now. I remember there was a time you couldn't walk into a store or a restaurant with a mask on or a bandana on, right? But now it's a fad. It's a fashion trend now. So let's look at it and say somebody's got to step back because social media is pushing so much information to us. How do we push and filter through the rhetoric and recognize that the red and the blue is what I say? You got two wings, a right wing, left wing, connected to the same head, the same bird, American eagle. So how do we figure out how do we attack the administration that's pushing down the rhetoric on either side? Terry, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, take a look at Dirk and Cleaver, because you look at Dirk, you would think that Dirk and Cleaver are running for city council with his commercial. And he walks through the neighborhood. Oh, look at this. Look, Emmanuel Cleaver's not done anything, man. Look, I am the first to call any politician out. Cleaver's brought in millions, hundreds of millions back to this community. And then you go back to, I remember a time when Kit Vaughn, which was a U.S. senator running for reelection, former governor, what's the guy's name? Jay Nixon was running.
Jay Nixon.
Jay Nixon screwed us around when I was on the school board and took out the DSEG case before we satisfied all the remedies of discrimination. You know what it did? I worked with local black ministers here, drove to St. Louis, got some ministers there. We beat him by 60,000 votes. And he was a Republican. We got to teach people lessons for not being with our community. Like I'm all out for this thing with Biden. But my thing is, I'm giving Biden a little redemption here, because Biden, what they don't understand, people don't understand, is that wasn't the Clinton bill. The bill was drafted by a congressman out of Dallas, Texas, a Republican. And yeah, Bill Clinton signed the bill, and so did Biden. So did the Congressional Black Caucus. So did the Hispanic Caucus and everybody else, because the drug game was out of control. Do I condone it? No. But during the Obama administration, the crack cocaine and the powder cocaine was changed. And then you saw all of those African-American men finally getting out of jail for nonviolent crimes. So I hate when Biden just sit around and let Trump say, I've done more for African-Americans than Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, I'm going to stop right there. Carlos, there you go, man. I'm going to hand it over.
That's gonna be Trump's next commercial, man. He's gonna have that old school hat, come out with his beard on for Halloween. He's like,
I'm paid. And he might say he's honest too.
No, guys, there's not a lot for me to add there. I think when you just look at it, it goes back on earlier. It's about education. Like prime example, look at our mayor situation, right? We've had more murders in KC this year, I think we had in recent years. And would that be tied to him? Well, why do we have more murders? What's going on with that? It's all about education. You just got to better understand so we can act. And to Ken's point, I do think it's got to be the top and the bottom working together to get to the middle. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both.
Yeah. So one of the challenges with this election coming up is they've polarized this election, and you have people sitting on opposite ends of the spectrum. What are we really? I'll put it on the table. What are we really voting for? You hear the term, "Oh, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils," or "I'm voting for the lesser of two evils." But what do you all feel that we're really voting for in this election? Are we voting for Black nationalism, a Black agenda? Are we voting for community and economic development? Are we voting for infrastructure? Are we voting to get rid of having to wear a mask with the pandemic? Are we voting because we just kind of know what to expect with Trump, but we don't know about Biden? I'll throw this out here. Are we voting for the potential or the option for a Black female president?
Well,
Okay.
I think
nobody wants us down.
No. Oh, I think it's a little bit of several of those items. But right now, we've got to get Trump out. I think Biden says it best when he says, we're fighting for the soul of this country. And that's really not an exaggeration. And that's why I stuck to the moral piece of this, because, that character piece is important. But we're also fighting just to be safe. If you're going to look, before we get to racism, before we get to policy, look at the safety issue that we're facing today. And when I say that, you can start with COVID. You can say Trump, the virus came from China, but in terms of that leadership position and the rhetoric, the lies, the falsehoods, over 200,000 people dead, you've got to take responsibility for that. And so, it's your actions as well as that leadership. You're telling people it's a hoax. You're telling people it's going to go away. the danger in that is what? People are saying that, they're repeating that. And so I've got links and files and all sorts of information where, yeah, I followed Trump's, my father followed Trump's advice, or a politician followed Trump's advice, and now he's dead. Solely based on Trump. So if you take that and then let's just look at, recent issues and then work back. Michigan, Trump said, liberate Michigan. And so now you've got a militia force that wants to kidnap, kill, start with Michigan, and then move to other states. Dangerous. So there's no equivalency here in terms of if Biden is better or not. Biden is exponentially better than Trump. That shouldn't even be a question, just based on the danger status. So first, we're just trying to get to land. So if you think of a drowning man and he sees the beach ahead, we're just trying to get to that edge. That's what Biden means. We don't think Biden is the savior. See, that's the narrative that Trump presents in terms of, I can do everything. It's only me. Biden says, I've got a team. Biden says it's a bridge. You look at his campaign team, you look at his plan for Black America, that's all developed with input and support with Black folks. That's not just Biden sitting there, but Trump says everything's about him. So we're trying to get to a safe place, in my opinion.
Anybody want to add to that? I took some notes. Akil, you want to add something, Carlos?
Yeah, I think we're looking at three different categories, Anthony. I think one, we're looking at morals versus money, right? And then we're looking at equality versus awareness. And then we're going to close it out with access versus exclusion. And I think those are the three things that we're talking about when it comes to our situation right now. So does he have morals, or do you want money? Are things equal? Are we all equal, or is it about awareness of what really is and how we define equality? And then who has access and who's excluded? I think we look at it from that standpoint, we'll make more informed decisions and have a better scenario for us all.
Man, Carlos is treading that line.
Carlos, I love that, because when you talk about the morals of money, that's when we have 50 cents and Ice Cube,
Right.
When you go to number two, the access, the Civil Rights Voting Act is sitting in the Congress right now, putting forth, when we talk about climate change, man, that's a direct impact to the African-American community for years. Quite frankly, even rural areas with white people, man. And so they are losing out as well. And so then when you go to the next point down here, man, having that access to capital that we could talk about. And I'm going forward with Akeem here. Akeem Jeffers will be the first African-American speaker. Give him 2 to 4 years, and we can see the change we've been looking for. The brother out of New York, he will be the first speaker. And man, we have all the bills to help impact our community, but they're sitting in the U.S. Congress. If we don't get the Senate, we can't implement that. And guys, we need gun control, because I know people are upset with the police department. I've been upset with them in the past, but guess what, man? We need to get these dangerous guns out of the hands of people in our community, because the police that are actually doing their job out there, which is 99% of them, dude, they are facing AK-47s every single day, and that's wrong. Something needs to be done, and we need to do it now, and it's all about having the moral and ethical turpitude to do it. So I'll be quiet.
No, you're good. Akil, did you want to add something?
No, man, I think they hit pretty much everything.
It's interesting, because the thing that I would add is we're not just voting on a president, and Terry and Carlos and Akil, you all alluded to it. We're voting for an administration. I think it would be easier for us if we could say, all right, if I'm voting for Trump, here's what you're going to get. If I'm voting for Biden, who's coming in office with him? And it's like we have more information when we're voting on an NBA all-star team than we do the people that are controlling our country. And if we're going to fight for something, we need to start fighting to change this political process, the system, so we can be informed voters, like Carlos said. But we also have to understand the rules of engagement politically. We have to start campaigning. and we have to start holding these people accountable, these elected officials accountable for what we voted them in office to do. But we also have to understand too, the people with money, they write checks and they have input to the plan, and they know they can pull together and mobilize people to get that plan executed. And so I think that's the piece that we miss as a community is we just get excited about a campaign. We don't get excited about writing checks, and we get excited about a plan. We don't get excited about the execution of a plan. And so I think that's what we have to be able to do, because I'm looking at this thing that's taking place. Trump was a Democrat. He wrote checks to Democrats and Republicans. And this is what people forget. Mm-hmm. He was in New York writing big checks to all major politicians. Then he flips the channel, and everybody forgets that he flipped over to the Republican side. But guess what? The people that have pushed this narrative around the pandemic, they're the Democratic supporters. Bill Gates is writing checks to the Democratic Party. So when you think about that, what does that tell us? Like, it's economics, it's dollars that push and drive agendas, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. And so I look at it and say, gentlemen, how do we start putting together our collective, not just buying power, but our influence to get an agenda sponsored, campaign for, sponsored, and input into action? Because that's the plan of action right there.
Well, I agree with you 100% on that. Being in the investment world, we as African Americans are responsible for $1.3 trillion in the economy. And how many times do we come together and let that money work for us to push our initiative, push our agenda, discuss our objectives, and actually execute? And we don't. So I think the first thing you said is start with us, and let's get that plan together and be able to get behind it. We need to be unified on all fronts. And let's face it, at the end of the day, I want to follow that person who's not getting anything done economically or the one that is. Because if I'm that person, that minority that's in need, the key question for me is, how am I going to be impacted day in and day out from your agenda? How do I benefit? What's in it for me?
Right. Anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the next step, honestly, is pushing what I like to call politics 102, because I'm still learning too. Because it's really about, PACs and how you get the money to politicians and hiring lobbyists, and I think that's the next step for us is organizing in that fashion. I'm just hearing about like our black people or our black party, which is a kind of a when I say this, a democratic, as in real democratic, group that's kind of coming together to form an agenda. And then, I'm just hearing about another, can't remember the name of it, but they started a PAC out of Georgia in Atlanta. And so it's those things like that that's going to help us propel agendas forward to make major impacts. Because we're going to have to do it on a local level first, just like you see with the trend with cannabis. That started with on a very local level, state level, and now it's pushing so hard that now it's going to have to be addressed federally sooner or later. So it's just things like that. So we just got to start taking over, like back to the coup idea, getting in, figuring out who the potential players are, and play chess with those.
Yeah,
it's interesting that you mentioned the term PAC, and I want to come back to that, but I know someone else wanted to jump in because that's an important part of the process. And it doesn't take a lot of money. You can have a PAC with $15,000, $50,000, $250,000, even then that goes from local to state to federal. It doesn't take a lot, and they're attaching an agenda to their dollars. When the politicians I've met with over the years, and they said, I talked to one mayoral candidate, he said, I need to raise $5,000 a day just to win this election. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, I need to get a group of 5 brothers to put up $1,000 so we can go have lunch or dinner with this man or woman so we can be in front of him. That's not a lot of money when you start thinking about it. We spend $5,000. That's a mortgage for some folks. $5,000 or $1,000 for 5 people to have lunch. they'll take that check because they know they have a goal and a threshold to raise money to get into office. And then that's a way that we can keep them accountable. Go ahead, Ken. I know you wanted to jump in, and I'll go back to
Yeah,
Terry
I just
as
wanted
well, too.
to say in terms of the community, we also need to make sure that we're not always starting over. There's been so many black agendas, so many black plans from Jesse Jackson and beyond. I mean, you can go to the 60s. There have been so many black plans and agendas that are out there. There's no need to start over. And that's one of the things that came up, with Ice Cube and the contract with Black America is that people said, well, the Congressional Black Caucus has already been working on, most of these issues and have laws. And I think, Terry, you mentioned that earlier. That people are actually working through policy and changes for black folks. You've got the NAACP, you've got the Urban League, but are we engaged in those organizations and those that are already on the streets that are doing the work? Many of our organizations, I've had issues with some of the organizations I've been in to say, you know what, we're still talking about the same issues and policies from when these
50
organizations
years
were
ago.
founded.
50
Yeah,
years ago.
and now it's a whole new ball game. And so, although we have these national agendas, when are we going to start talking about business and entrepreneurs? When are we going to start talking about actually understanding policy? When are we going to start? So those are the things that we need to do, but starting with the organizations that are already in the streets that are doing work and just realizing that, we don't have to start from ground zero. I've seen these plans and agendas already.
But we have to hold those organizations not accountable, not to sell out, and not to stay in that leadership position long enough where people can't relate to them. The challenge in our community sometimes is you got people in their 60s or 70s that are comfortable in that leadership role. They won't give brothers Carlos and Terry's age. They won't give someone Akil's age a pipeline to develop future leadership so they can keep what I consider the economic train or the community development train going, and it doesn't have a caboose. And what you see is in other communities, primarily white communities, they have a succession. They have a 125-year plan. And so, but we come up with a 2 to 3 year plan or a 4-year plan, and we're working up against a 25-year agenda. Terry, did you want to add something? I know you've been kind of setting back, leaning back in, leaning out.
To say, first of all, I want to say Carlos is the only one with a $5,000 mortgage on this call.
Right.
No, Carlos.
While Terry gets geared back, I don't know what's going on with your camera, Terry, but just in terms of the economics, and that's why, again, I started in terms of, the moral principles that we need to leave with, what's going on in terms of just getting safe out of this dangerous position. But when we talk about money, too often the conversation goes directly to money and we forget about, some of these important issues like racism, and so we need to get to that conversation. But, because when we talk about money and then we have to make sure that we go to the details of it, again, when are we going to get savvy enough to understand what's in front of us? Trump put out a platinum plan. People's eyes got big when they saw $500 billion. Then you look at the plan and it doesn't say anything about giving black folks $500 billion. I've got it right in front of me. It says increase access to capital in black communities by almost $500 billion.
That's
And
opportunity zones. Let's talk about what that translates into. That's opportunity zones, and it's tied to a tax incentive.
Exactly. But it's not, people don't see that. They don't see that it's not, he didn't say giving money to black people. He just said make money available. The same with infrastructure. They said 500 billion to infrastructure. Didn't say anything about black people. So those are the games that are in there that we get tricked by because it's just a headline. And so that's kind of, that's one of the points that they brought up. I even saw that on Roland Martin. It's like, look at the details. There are no details.
But Ken, I can say too, we have to start using the system against themselves and for ourselves. So you say you take something as an opportunity zone. Well, we have some affluent African American people. We need to inform them on how they can use opportunity zones to invest on the perimeter and also
yeah.
inside of those opportunity zones. And we have some people, but I think the biggest
yeah.
point is I'm gonna give a shout out to brother Eric Clark because he's putting some stuff out there. We do need to start making sure that we become politically literate on the system and how the system works and how we can use it to our advantage, both local, both state, and federal. And so those are the things that beyond just voting, we have to teach our children why they vote, what they're voting for, and the impact, because there's policies at the federal level that we have to live by that George Bush put in place. There's policies that we're continuing to live by, and they say, wow, well, man, he can sign with one stroke of a pen an executive order and override or veto. And we have to start teaching our children that. And so how do we teach our children? How do we close that educational gap, not only just in the classroom, not only just in our communities, but also at the executive branch level, the judicious level branch, and in political? How do we teach them that? Anybody have any ideas and thoughts? I'm thinking of that conjunction, what's your function? ABC, schoolyard, schoolhouse rock.
Well, yeah, I mean, you really have to take, when you say how do we, it's taking ownership of that information, taking ownership of the information in your house, meaning that, I'm going to teach, my kids, my wife, my family members, the essence of what's going on. We saw when during the impeachment, how many people thought that, oh, I think Trump's going to be gone if we get him impeached. And it was like just this whole civics lesson that people were starting to learn. And it's the same way with laws. It's like Trump presents himself as the ultimate lawmaker. I did this. It's like the how a bill, just like you said, how a bill really becomes a law. And it's like people will say, well, he did something for, the HBCUs, and then you look at it. Well, who presented the bill? Who actually put in the work? That was a black woman that actually proposed the bill, got it through Congress. That's her work. And so when you look at it, it's not like we need Trump. It's like all of these people are actually doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, getting bipartisan deals done and making things happen. But we have to go through that process about how a bill really becomes a law, what happens next, what's the president's role, that the House of Representatives is different from the Senate and they have different responsibilities and roles. And so we have to, that's a week over week, day by day process, but it starts by owning the information and owning the facts. And before we get too far along, we're actually about to wrap up.
Right.
We want to make sure that we, deliver some of this fact-based information. And one of the things that we have on our 12 site, we've broken down, Biden in terms of the policies, his successes, even Trump in terms of what he claims. All of that is out there and available for you. And then when you research that and own those facts, you'll realize that when Trump talks about the economy, he's talking about something that the Obama-Biden administration created. Over 7 years of economic growth. When you talk about job comparison, Trump to Obama, more jobs in a 3-year period under Obama, the Biden administration than Trump.
Can't let Terry back in. Terry's waiting to get back in.
All right. So again, we have to kind of break down those details, but give people that information in bite-sized forms. And so that's what we've got on our site. So if you go to 12kc.com/Biden, you'll get these nuggets, and you'll go get them also from our Facebook page. But we'll try to get to a few more points as well.
So before we close out, I want to give each one of the brothers a minute to share some closing words or a closing thought on why we need to get out and vote. How do we cut through the lies? How do we deliver facts? And more importantly, how do we inspire people to vote, not just in this election, but 2022, 2024, and 2026, because the voting is a biannual process.
Well,
Akil.
Yeah. You want me to start it off?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, vote, KC.
All right, so man, I'm gonna take my time to say, first and foremost, don't wait till November 3rd to vote. Go ahead and get it done. You can vote at election boards all over Missouri. I don't know about y'all stuff outside of Missouri. but this is what we're gonna do in Missouri. Hit election boards and tell them you want to vote absentee. Get that off rip. The next thing is really start talking to your people, man. Start figuring out who you think is I don't even want to say able, but willing to listen to political jargon with you and figure out what kind of agendas that they have and see where y'all interests align. So that way y'all can together, push for a PAC or maybe join another PAC or, be involved in the organization that's helping propel agenda. And finally, look out for the youngest, man. Now, whether that's junior high, high school, or college, get them involved with the political system. I would love it, if some of our more multicultural districts put projects out there to help write a bill, help them, teach them, how to contact elected officials and figure out that they are reachable. Like they got a phone number, they got an email address, and they will email you back and start getting them engaged young and early, so that way it kind of sparks, like we said, that the opportunities are out there, the trades, the entrepreneurship, the politics, all that is available. You just have to know that it's available.
Thank you for that, Akil. Carlos, here, I'm going to have you wrap it up. Carlos, what's your closing words and closing thoughts for the people?
I go back to what I said earlier, Anthony. To me, I equated to going to a basketball game at the Sprint Center, right? Just because I got access to the Sprint Center, but I'm in the nosebleeds, doesn't mean I'm not excluded from the floor, which is a different experience. So in our political system, we can get access all the time, but still be excluded. So we got to get education for ourselves to understand just because I'm in the room doesn't mean I'm not excluded. And then when we look at what they call equality, yeah, I can say I got these programs in place, these things that are going forward to make things equal, but where's the awareness on what that really means? I can put money in your community and you still not ever touch it. So for me, it's still about the education for us to become more aware. And I would love to see a program where our ex-politicians, both local and national, when they get done or they retire, why not come back and have, like they do presidential libraries, why not do local teaching seminars or programs to where I get out of office, now I teach the people on what I learned and what I experienced while I was in office, so we all become more aware. I think that's a missing piece for our community to move forward and get better at helping our next generation be better in the future.
That's what corporate CEOs do.
Yep.
Terry, you want to close us out?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I mentor a number of people around the country. But you know what, Carlos? I need to do that here locally. I have a few elected officials I work with. But the reason why I'm voting in this election is because civil rights is on the ballot this time. Voting rights is on the ballot. Education is on the ballot. Our democracy is on the ballot. In fact, quite frankly, our kids are on the ballot. And so I just want anyone that's listening tonight, go get 5 of your friends, get out and vote. You have the innovation room down at Union Station. You got Gregory Hill's Church of God on 7020 James A. Reed Road, United Believers Church. You can vote through Election Day. The whole person, you can vote from 10 to 5. And Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Center is open from 10 to 6. Get out and vote. Don't talk, just vote.
All right. Thank you, brothers. Ken, did you want to have any closing words? I think the message tonight is get informed, get out and vote, and whoever gets elected into office, whether you vote for them or not, you keep them accountable for pushing an agenda for our community, local and state, and at the federal level. Let's build a pipeline for the future. That's the underturn that I got, and I appreciate you, brothers, for sharing tonight. It's a pleasure meeting and seeing some of you brothers that I hadn't seen for a while. Ken, you're on mute. Ken was doing Russell Simmons. Thanks for coming out. God bless.
Yep.
Good night.
Yeah. Let me turn one off. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. So we didn't touch a whole lot on the racism piece, but I wanted to, especially make it a point for Black voters. So, at the end of the day, one of the issues uh, that I see out there is people prioritize certain things over others, meaning that, they say Trump is great for the, economy, and I've got facts that say otherwise. And so all that information is available. But one of the things for Black voters in particular, which is why we're pushing Biden, right before Trump's platinum plan that came out, and we're talking about last month, one of the initiatives that he's championed is to remove the 1619 project in terms of that education in schools and replace it with his own, the 1776 project. And so what he's saying is that 1619, you guys are talking about slavery and the importance of slavery and how that impacts American society, and American society was built on the backs of slaves. Yes, exactly. And so he's changed it. He wants to rewrite history by posing his own narrative, calling it the 1776 plan. And so you've got someone that is stating that not only are they going to acknowledge slavery, they're going to restate it and reframe it, because he also says that he doesn't believe in systemic racism. And so he uses the term you drink and so when Ice Cube went to Trump, that was the whole foundation and premise of that was counter to what Ice Cube had, meaning that Ice Cube built his plan to say, yes, Black people gave this country so much, America owes us. And Trump is saying the exact opposite. So he doesn't have our best interests at hand. He is impacting us directly with his racial rhetoric, and now to a policy level in terms of how our schools are impacted in terms of education and information. And so when we talk about get out and vote and talk about the issues at hand, we need to make sure that we understand that we can't let someone come in and try to rewrite our history and the impact that we've made to this country. So we've got to get out and vote him out, stop the clown show.
Well,
Ken.
Drop the mic.
Ken,
you know
hey.
what? Ken said everything I wanted to say. Ken, I was trying to be mild, but guys, the last thing with Ice Cube, you guys heard of Steve Bannon, the senior advisor to the president? He is the CFO of Ice Cube's 3-on-3. 3-on-3 basketball company. His
He's
company.
Investor.
He's an investor. No, but he's the actual CFO. And so, dude, you're willing to let this man come into your circle when he's a self-proclaimed white supremacist. Dude, I got a problem with that. I do. And so your credibility's gone. If you want to, never mind. I'm done. But hey, guys, it was an honor being on here with you guys.
Likewise.
We are going to follow up. We need to have our follow-up for real. All of us follow up, because I just think this conversation just does not need to just go in vain.
I agree. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. God bless you. Be safe out there, but also go vote. Not just now, but all in the future. If you got children, teach your children the importance of voting and why they should vote. Y'all take care. Have a great evening.
Good night, guys.
All right.